Hey everyone, this is Illia, co-founder of Near Protocol, and today I'm gonna do a whiteboard with myself. We're gonna dive into Near's future and kind of explore the vision for the ecosystem as well as a lot of work ahead. To start with, Near's mission is a world where people have control over their assets, data, and power of governance. And to build this world, right, and to bring billions of users, we need a number of things. And specifically, we need a platform to bring them on. We need the ecosystem to support it, and we need applications for people to use. And so kind of across each one of these dimensions, there's a number of things that, already here, as well as still need to be built out and going to be expanding. But the way we measure success, first and foremost, is active users, is people who actually are in the ecosystem, on the platform, using applications, getting value. And kind of across, to achieve mainstream adoption, foremost, you need the utility, you need the value to the users. And that is achieved, through building great experiences. So how do we get there, right? Let's dive into platform first. So platform is a number of things, but kind of high level, it's the protocol itself, right? The Near protocol that powers with consensus, with smart contracts, with all the things. It's also, a set of standards and tools and infrastructure, right? There's a lot of infrastructure needed for, beyond just protocol. And, for clarity, protocol is just a piece of specification described somewhere, and somebody needs to implement it, somebody needs to run it, and that is part of infrastructure. So if we want to get to 1 billion users, right, what do we need from a protocol to achieve that, right? Well, we need it to be simple. What does that mean? It means that as a user, you will not need to figure out how this protocol works, right? You should not start by reading a white paper of specification to use this, right? You don't start by reading, how distributed systems work to use Facebook or Google. It also similarly should be simple to build, right? You should not need to figure out all the details of, distributed systems and like how consensus works to build on it. Ideally, it should support languages that you're familiar with, right? And so Near has been really focused on all this and kind of splitting this into user simplicity and developer simplicity. For users, we have kind of built a lot of things around account model. And I'll talk about later, there's a lot of videos about it. For developers, we've been focused on kind of WebAssembly. And so WebAssembly is an environment that allows kind of generic applications to run, and it is something beyond blockchain space. There is, it runs actually in every browser. There's a lot of major players working with it. It's used in IoT, it's used in kind of for cloud deployments and in blockchain. And so what it allows to do is actually to use Rust, the most loved language, and JavaScript, maybe the most used language. And so we actually recently launched the first version, and it's going to be evolving all of the JavaScript support, allowing anyone to just ship their JavaScript code directly as a smart contract. Obviously, here you have a lot more, right? On the other side, you need to make sure you have all the tooling, you need all infrastructure, and so this is kind of a huge effort to make the developer experience, as close to what people are used to in kind of Web 2. Now, you need to be secure as a platform, right? If we think about the user, kind of mainstream user, they should not need to think about, will they be scammed by the next application they use? Will the plugin they install will steal all of their funds? And similarly, they should not need to think about, will, when they send from one application to another, the other application runs on a chain that will disappear tomorrow. Like, there needs to be a level of security that kind of almost transparent to the user, but as a set of standards, as a economic security presents with kind of framework that protects the user. And so obviously, there's proof of stake, there is kind of the approaches, security audits, as well as things like, red, blue teams that constantly auditing and trying to break and finding the vulnerabilities. And there is kind of user security. And I'll talk about this kind of in the further part, but user security is really important because right now, normal people are afraid of using, like, if you're not a tech person, if you're not a crypto person, people are actually afraid of using because they're afraid of losing their assets, they're afraid that something will go wrong. And they cannot read the smart contract, right, to understand what is actually happening. And the final part of the platform is it needs to be scalable. So again, billion users means it needs to actually scale. And it will have, hundreds, thousands, millions of applications running. Some of them, there's obviously a distribution, and so some of them will have hundreds of millions of users. And to achieve that, you need something that can scale to them. And kind of the only way to scale in the world is to run things in parallel. This is kind of every single approach to scalability is running things in parallel. In the Web 2 world, it's called sharding, meaning you have multiple machines that are and kind of ideally ever expanding system where the data, the processing is being parallelized. In the blockchain world, there is rollups, app chains, parachains, CNETs, and other things. And so kind of sharding became a very specific subset of parallelization. But at the end, a lot of these things just have a different experience as a user. And so following this kind of pattern, we want something that's simple and it's secure. So how do we achieve scalability that's simple for the user, simple for the developer, and it's secure? And the answer is sharding, and it's sharding which is hidden from the user, right? So as a user, you should not need to think about, is this application on a different shard, on a different app chain, parachain, etc.? Will I be able to communicate? Do I have, do I have tokens to pay fees on this other chain or roll up or whatever? How long is it going to take to withdraw? All of that should not be in the user mind. And so that's why kind of, a true sharding, the same as in Web 2, where you don't need to think about the scalability under the hood. You don't think how many machines Google run. You just enter your query. And so that's what Near being focused on from the start is how do we achieve that? Obviously, there's a lot of work being put in. There's still a lot of work to do. And you can check out our roadmap around that and where we are. So these are kind of, basic properties that we believe very little of other protocols and ecosystems are focusing on. Because a lot of people focus on how we build this product, how do we build this consensus, or how do we make fees cheap. But we really believe that to achieve mainstream adoption, simplicity is the key. Security within simplicity is the key. And then given these constraints, how do you build scalably systems? That's what Near Protocol is focused on. Obviously, we've made a lot of progress, and obviously there is still a lot of work, and I invite everyone to join. I'll talk about account model just to cover some of that. And then we're gonna start expanding from there. So account model is important because this is actually what represents user on-chain and kind of in the Web3 world, right? And so near account model is completely different from everybody else because it's designed to give the user the control they need while allowing developers to build as flexible systems as they want. And so it starts with a user ID, an account ID. And so my account, for example, is illia.near. So this is maps to kind of a set of things, right? Is how much near I have, for example, and some other information. And this is also kind of across the whole ecosystem maps to other tokens, to NFTs, to what are you using in social networks, what are you doing in DAOs, etc. And so you can pull in all of the information based on this account ID. Now, how does blockchain know who can access this? And so the way this is done is by having a number of so-called keys. And so if you're familiar with kind of Web 2 approaches, it's very similar to so-called OAuths, where you're actually giving different tokens to different applications or user browser and to have access to some application in, for example, Facebook or Google. And so these keys, the difference for us is they are actually cryptographic public keys. And on top, they have permissions. And so you can program pretty much these keys to have different permissions to configure how you want. So simplest way, right? My account, I have a public key and I have all permissions, so-called full access key. So I can control this account completely. I can, for example, move the money. I can use the apps, and I can replace the keys. So let's imagine there is something going on with security of even cryptography of this public key. What I can do is I can create a new key and add it, and then remove the old key. Now your account, while doing this, doesn't change, right? All of the assets you have don't change, which means you have just replace the keys, similar how you would change a password. Right? And this is pretty unique. Actually, no other blockchain allows you to do that. If something's wrong with your key in one of the other blockchains, you actually need to go and send all the assets to a new account, which can be almost impossible if you have lockups, if you have some kind of lock drop or anything else. Now, because it has permissions, you can actually give other applications, other front ends, browser, game, etc., some permissions. For example, I go to a game, I log in there, give permission to interact in a game, and now I can play with the game without going to a wallet and signing every transaction. Right? The front end itself has a key to sign a specific set of transactions. You can give a permission for somebody else to recover your key. So this is going into a little bit what you can do with user security, because what if you lost this key? Now the account is fully locked. But you can say, hey, my friend John, or a set of friends, or maybe a bank, or maybe somebody else can have a recovery key. And so this recovery key has the only permission is to add key with delay. So very simple, right? This can be 2FA, this can be like, multi-sig. So there's multiple parties need, what if 3 banks need to actually do this at the same time? Why is this important? Is because if you lost your key, for example, from one of your devices, or you should probably have different devices with different keys, you lost all of them, you can go to them, and start this recovery process. It's with a delay, for example, a week or months, whatever you want, and you get access to the account back. If they try to do it themselves, right, for example, not very trustworthy bank, you'll see that, and you can actually stop it, you can remove their key, and you can complain on Twitter, and potentially sue them if it's a bank. So you actually have an ability to create recovery methods on this account. Now, beyond that, you can actually have a single-use key. This is just, again, the same pattern, the same system. You can add a key that is programmed to be used one time for one transaction only for calling a specific set of function, and then it gets deleted. Why this is used? For example, the near account actually is an account itself, and you can call it to register with some, near NFTs, fungible tokens, etc. And with a single-use public key. And now you can give the private key from this, right, pretty much the password from this, to somebody else to call this near account to create new account for them, right? Let's say robert.near, which will receive the NFTs, whatever, stables, etc., that you send to them. This allows to have a single link with a private key, just that you send to a person who does not have an account yet, to click on, to create account, to get all the assets, to get, even potentially join a DAO, get some NFTs. This is pretty unique because you actually cannot do this in centralized system. You cannot send something to somebody in Venmo if they don't have an account, but you can in Near. So generally, kind of very flexible model. This model also allows to create sub-accounts. So only Near can create something .near. Only Illia.near can create something x.illia.near. So you have this ability to create subspaces which are controlled by your kind of smart contract on this account. And by the way, every account is a contract as well. So every account is actually an app. And just by default, it's an empty app. There's nothing there. But you can obviously add and remove apps upgrade. And your permissions define how you do that. So you can have, upgradable in place apps if you want. You can also have non-upgradable apps by removing all the keys and not programming upgradability into contract. And you can allow them to create subspaces which you operate. So very flexible model, a lot of functionality, a lot of flexibility, and designed to be to give the simplicity to the user, right? They don't need to know about, hashes, even public keys, like all of the stuff actually doesn't need to be shown to the user. This can be mapped to a device name, right? This is my, iPhone, this is my MacBook, and this is, a trustworthy bank or, a set of trustworthy friends, right? So you can have the keys actually can be mapped into what they represent. And so now, and permissions they're allowed to do. So you can give this to kind of people who are not technical, who don't know how crypto works, and explain to them, here's your account, here's, add your devices, here's your recovery way of doing things, and then start onboarding and building users. So that's account model. There's a lot more infra that, as I mentioned, kind of at the core of this, right, we have Near protocol. And so if you're familiar with an open source, right, you have Linux. There's Linux kernel, there's a lot of Linux kind of utilities and projects around it. They're all open source. They're all being contributed by a lot of different parties. And then there's companies that are actually doing the work and contributing and building business around. And so similarly, Near protocol is an open source protocol. There is kind of everything is there. You can contribute to it, you can work on it, and there's companies that are working with it, right? So one of the kind of main companies that focus on infrastructure is called Pagoda, and it's designed to work to deliver kind of Web3 startup platform. And so this is a place where you can have a lot of developer tooling. You have RPCs, SDKs, and where you get kind of integration of analytics, triggers, indexing, all of the tooling you need to build your Web3 kind of platform. You have things like Calimera. Calimera is a private shard, is a way to run, for example, for enterprise or for a DAO, something that's not publicly visible. Not all data is publicly visible while still connected to the main chain, to the protocol. And obviously they contribute to the protocol itself. You have Aurora. Aurora runs on top of Near. It's a smart contract on top of Near. It uses all of the facilities of Near and then on top provides a way to launch Ethereum applications and use all of the Ethereum tooling really easily, right? They contribute to the Near protocol. They actually have been one of the biggest drivers for the performance improvement that protocol has done in past year, which allowed us to launch JavaScript. And obviously they build a lot of tooling, including some of the user experience things to actually remove the fees from the user side. You have things like Octopus, right? So beyond kind of scalability of sharding, you may need more parallelization and you need more capacity and you may need more customization. And so Octopus allows you to run app chains, custom app chains that still link to Near, that are actually still interactive with Near wallets and connect to the infrastructure and ecosystem. You have kind of a lot of different storage solutions. One of the newer ones called unpacking. You have a number of, but also like Filecoin, Saya, etc. You have oracles like Flux and others, and kind of you have more and more of these things popping up. Right? There's Rainbow Bridge, which allows to communicate with Ethereum and with other chains. And there's other bridges here. So there's a lot of infrastructure. A lot of it is either using, contributing, asking others to build pieces and kind of continuously evolving the Near protocol and standards. And so that's a platform that you can rely on, right? That's a platform that is actually decentralized, not just because the protocol is decentralized and run by a number of validators, ever growing with more shards, but also because you have a lot of different parties building different pieces of the infrastructure, contributing to the protocol, and being able to understand and push it forward. Moving up the stack, we have ecosystem. Why is ecosystem important, right? Let's say, you have all the technology, you have all the nodes, everything's running, go build stuff. And the reality is, at some point, maybe it's all going to be functioning itself, but at the end, the whole point of Web3 is the ecosystem, is composability, is this interaction of different parties working together. And so to bootstrap, but also over time to govern and kind of navigate this, right? If we're talking about this very decentralized structure, we need kind of an understanding how this ecosystem works, evolves, and functions to really guide that kind of as a whole. And so originally it started with Near Foundation, right? Near Foundation was there to launch the Near protocol, although even at launch, right, it already pulled in a lot of validators to actually vote, to participate, to drive and work with delegators. And so the launch itself was already decentralized. But now beyond that, there's a number of go-to-markets like teams and companies that have popped up, which are focused on different aspects of the ecosystem. And so one of them is proximity. There's Human Guild. There's MetaWeb, Move, and others. So, for example, proximity focuses specifically on finance and DeFi, right? They have a team that does everything from helping investing, giving grants, building, and kind of connecting pieces and dots for DeFi applications. There's a wide variety, obviously, of applications that are coming, and so they understand which ones will work right now, which ones need to be help, what are the missing pieces, and then kind of trying to help out and fill them in. You have very similar approach on Human Guild side, but for gaming. They're trying to build a whole ecosystem of founders, of game developers, who will help each other build their games successfully in Web3, right? There's still a lot of research how to build games. There's still a lot of learning. And so they, hosting founder to founder, helping office hours. And then you have lots of kind of eco funds that are funding different applications and teams in the ecosystem. And then beyond that, given Near is very global, there is a number of kind of regional hubs which are focused on kind of different markets in the world, right? And obviously all of them start in the market and then expand. They focused on everything from community and ecosystem development in that market, finding developers, finding projects, and then connecting with the government, connecting with enterprises, connecting with VCs and kind of funding in that area. And so they're kind of becoming a representation of Near, but they all are are incentivized and in a way building this ecosystem because they want their projects and their investments to be successful. And so that allows to kind of have a presence around the world that's very driven by kind of investment, product building, ecosystem development around the world, as well as around different aspects of the ecosystem. So if you think of it as kind of a matrix, right? You have DeFi, NFT, gaming, etc. You have like countries, and so you have kind of coverage across each dimension, and they work with each other and coordinate with each other when this intersects. Now, we'll see this evolving, right? Like right now, I think we're at 5 different regional hubs. We expect, over the next few years, this to continue growing to 20, potentially some of them, actually popping up themselves. And similarly, with eco funds and with verticals, there's a number of new verticals, as people actually figuring out where even more, like where things are actually ready to be mature to be built in Web3, more and more verticals are being developed. Okay, and the third part is apps. At the end, this is what users use, right? This is what they come for. This is where the value is. And so all of the other pieces are really just to bootstrap, build, expand, retain the users. Now, this is going back to why blockchain, why Web3, right? The mission is people controlling their assets, data, power, governance. We, on one side, believe that the current approach where users don't have control over the data, they were signed off in terms of service, and banks control their assets and can deposit them and can go out of business, not just banks, centralized applications as well. And at the same time, people actually don't have much say on how these things evolve. And this is somewhat true in many places of the world about kind of broader decision making in the countries. And so all of this, right, are kind of core properties that we want to achieve. And the question is, A, how do we get there? B, what are the best apps that surfaces, right? And so obviously finance has been the most clear use case, because with finance, this is where the assets are. We've seen multiple failures, including in blockchain with centralized parties over past 10 years, to be clear, where things, if you don't control your assets, they're not yours, and you may not be able to get them. At the same time, the other part is social, right? Social social is our life. Social is how we communicate, how we, read the information, how we propagate it as well. And right now it is, controlled by centralized systems. It's kind of everything from, the data you put in to how it's shown is fully controlled and fully owned by those centralized parties. And to be clear, those centralized parties actually don't want that either, but economically, they are, that's their mode, and so they are, continue doing that. They're not able to break out of that loop, however, even some of the founders want to. And so it's pretty clear that, this will shift. And it's already been shifting kind of in different aspects in Web3. And the final part is the creator economy. is creators. Because, the social have kind of across, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, have kind of created massive platforms where creators are able to have their audiences, but they also have, naturally through their own incentives, dominated the economy of this, right? As an influencer, as a writer, as artist, you pretty much giving up your ownership, and they can kind of target your audience. They can put their ads. They can change how it's shown, and they can ban you at any time. And so what we've seen again with blockchain, the kind of opening up of this economy for creators around the world, removing the barriers, giving the direct access to the users, to the audience, have been a huge kind of economic boost for everyone. Although we still don't have all of the tools and all of the platforms built out. But these three things actually create almost a kind of a flywheel. And we call this whole thing, ownership creator economy, because, this is where the platform and distribution is. This is where liquidity and kind of financing is. And this is where the creation and kind of value add is, because at the end, you cannot just have an economy that's based on a circle economy. So value creation is important. Kind of supply chain is important. Now, there's a missing piece in this, which is this is all good. Some of these pieces have been existing in Web3 for a while now, but they have been very much existing just in Web3, right? If we think about, it's really hard to onboard new users. It was really hard to kind of go back and forth between crypto and non-crypto. And kind of it's really hard to interact and experience with it for people who don't have an economy yet. And so the missing piece here has been pretty much a massive user onboarding. Something that can bring, tens to hundreds of millions of users. And now we have a few of these things already, and more are coming. And these are Web2 apps that are actually already have the audience, that already have the distribution, but don't have the moat, that don't have the control, and they are interested in kind of bringing these users to this economy. And so a good example is Sweatcoin, but also Brave, and others like that. Is apps, browsers, or Move to Earn and other forms of to earn, which onboard users and use pretty much their attention, right, in both ways, to kind of bring them into this economy. And these things are what going to be putting the fire on this flywheel and creating kind of bigger and bigger circles. Now, let's dive in each one of these, because each one has a number of pieces that are important. And so starting with finance, right? There is a whole slew of kind of things, right, that start with, stable coins. It's very hard to, transact and interact with blockchain if you don't have a stable coin. You need DEXs, and here you need order book DEX. You need AMM for kind of liquid stuff. You need lending facility. You need insurance. You need options and derivatives that create kind of bigger liquidity. So all of the kind of standard, if we think of this part as standard traditional finance that we're pretty much rebuilding in the blockchain, based on kind of this ownership of assets as well, some of the economy. And so to expand this, right, if it's all in crypto, it's very self-referential. You're just kind of creating a derivative on a token that order book is traded on order book that is issued by a lending protocol. What you need is real-world assets. And you need kind of banking facility. And so when I say banking, maybe it's better to say neobanking. But it's ability for normal users to sign up, to issue a credit card, to accept wire, to send out ACH, etc. Right? Like all of the things that people are used to in normal banking, but it's hooked in directly into your kind of account and all of the financial infrastructure that's here, right? And there's few people building this kind of hooking in. And so on Near, this kind of the huge benefit is that because your account is so programmable, you can directly build your banking infrastructure on Near. So you don't need to have even potentially custody to offer some of this value. And obviously, like to do this, you need still KYC, compliance, and many other pieces. And then you have, as soon as you have this, you now have treasury, you have yield optimizers, then you build all of the kind of large financial management tooling to do this. But this is kind of, stable coins, real world assets, banking are the thing, and then, DEXs, lending are the fundamental pieces that actually create kind of a fully functioning infrastructure. And now you still need, and this is how it connects to social and creator, you have, kind of a token facility, right? So token facility is what will create new value, new assets that are either backed by, creator community, by social, by, new projects launching, etc. And then, they go through DEXs and kind of start creating economy, land in your, bank account, and you can spend it with your credit card. Obviously, a lot more pieces, there's a lot of projects building this. There's a lot of still missing pieces here. Insurance is important across a whole set of spectrums, right? Everything from, like failure of DeFi projects to, ensuring something real world to, ensuring your account, how FDIC does it. Like you can actually do that directly on crypto and allow to provide some like account level insurance. Okay, now let's dive into social. So usually kind of before we would call social DAOs. And on one side it's true because DAOs are actually a social construct and any kind of social gathering on blockchain ends up one way or another a DAO or token or something. On the other side, there's a lot more to social than just DAOs. And kind of we see more and more things are being built out to facilitate interactions, facilitate the communication between people, and a kind of organization that doesn't always involve money. And kind of DAO in many ways is more of a decision making and money transmission. So for me, DAO is social that has direct linkage to financial infrastructure, to financing, to bank accounts, right? Like Facebook groups with bank accounts. And so here's the important pieces, obviously, kind of everything from user profile to social graph to, reputation. And then beyond that, content. And, you grow from there. And so kind of just to stop by on a few of these things, user profile is really interesting because you have actually two sides. You have the user side, kind of what user wants to leave. And then you have the kind of the external side, what others want to talk. And because in blockchain, and especially on Near, there's no difference between the user account, a DAO account, an application account, fundamentally, you can actually have a profile for the app, for your DAO, for anything you want to represent as an account on there, which you can do pretty much with everything. And so that allows you to then have a social graph of these profiles, right? So you can follow a project, you can interact with it. The project itself can be linked to a DAO that then interacts with somebody else. And so social graph then becomes extremely important piece because, and this, Facebook knew it and they closed the access to it at some point because you can build so much more businesses around this, right? You can kind of, the amount of things you can do, kind of mashups and ways to interact with users that you can build if there is a social graph that owned by the user, not by the platform, is amazing. And so I'm excited to see over the next couple of years how this evolves, because as we kind of see these pieces both on chain and some of them will be using decentralized storage, we'll see a lot of the kind of this composability coming out. And for example, reputation, right? So reputation in many ways is based on your social graph, is based on your interactions, is based on your profile, is based on your content. And so, but then reputation becomes extremely important signal into lending, into insurance, into interactions with DAOs and everything, right? So like you have this kind of way where then it comes back again, and when you look at the user profile, you can actually see the reputation. Content, and this is important as it goes into creator economy, is obviously, if we're thinking of social, right, it's first and foremost a creator platform, is communication platform, is a way to interact, and obviously there's a messaging platform here as well. Content is a way for people to create, interact, communicate, and so again, it's linked with reputation as well, right? Like you want to read reputable content. You want to read content that, coming from maybe your friends or from things you follow or from, apps that you're using, which is why, this goes into certification, which, potentially goes back into kind of content. Like, you want to know this is and there's a moderation here as well. You want to know this is, for example, from a reputable journal, and so they certify it, and then you have a set of moderators, like a community-based moderation that ensures that this content passes some set of filters, and then you as a user can pick which moderators you want to interact with. And so all of this they're interconnected, right? They're all pieces of the puzzle. And as they're getting built out, they provide us a better infrastructure that you can build then a lot of other pieces on, right? You can build your new media on top of this because it's more trustworthy. It's easier to connect other things. It has cryptographic certification that content is not modified after it's published. It has linked into network of moderators who are trustworthy by you because you're following them. And so there's a number of ways how you can position this and package this for the specific users. But at the end, it's common data platform, common account model, common usage model. And all of this can be, the applications can be doing this. The application can be messaging the user through their account model as well. And so you can create kind of all of these different aspects of interactions. And so, and obviously, to not forget, the DAO infrastructure here, right, is what allows for the users to interact with financial things, which then goes into token facility, right? The DAO is where you can actually launch a token as a community. You can issue it, you can interact with it. You can, for example, start then connecting content and token and kind of create creator economy from there. So this is where kind of this thing span. Right now we have very basic things here with user profiles and DAOs, but as this stuff gets built out, you kind of get richer and richer interactions here. And so finally, coming to the creator economy, creators, right? The kind of, it starts with social, it starts with, there's no creator that doesn't want people to follow and to interact with them. So it starts with social, but obviously there is, new primitive of NFTs that's been created that allows to have an ownable piece of creation, right? So you have this content now, and this content can be, everything. It's images, videos, music, but also it's programs. It can be levels for the game, like anything that the user generated, right? Modifications, is the content. It can be ownable. It can create, royalties. It can be then linked to a DAO that then issues a token, right? So really the creator economy is this kind of linkage of ownership of the assets, some form of following and social, and linked to some economy that gets linked into the finance. So that's why the creator economy really kind of links these pieces, social and finance, through kind of creation. And obviously there's a lot of tooling, there's a lot of applications and things to do with NFTs, everything from minting, selling, interacting, utility. Like now, you can use it for ticketing, you can use it for, art, you can use it for, games, etc., right? And so that's why, when we think of games, like in a way, this is just a part of the creator thing, because you have the games that creating NFTs that also allowing maybe users to potentially kind of combine multiple NFTs into new ones, etc. And then they interacting through the DAO to their users, to their economy, and then creating new tokens in game to interact with it. So like all of this is kind of interlinking, and because each of these primitives is very composable and they're on blockchain is very there's a set of properties that you can rely on when you're using it. You can start building kind of this different interactions, and we will see more and more people kind of building out new things that we haven't seen before, right? So kind of, I mentioned user onboarding, right? And so user onboarding is really important because, again, to get to 1 billion users, we need simplicity. And so when you think of user journey, they'll start somewhere where it's something that creates value for them. That's why something like Sweatcoin, Brave, and other kind of onboarding mechanisms are so valuable, because they kind of create value. They kind of convert, in a way, the user attention to the direct value to the user, right? Something that Google and Facebook convert to their dollars in their bank account. And so the user actually gets some token, that be Brave or Sweat, that now is living in some account. And so this is an important piece, because this is where kind of their on-chain life starts, right? And so that's really important to make this step extremely easy. Again, because of the near account model, we can create kind of accounts very easily. We can, on top of it, start with maybe less secure setup, right? You can actually start with something that, maybe you just sign up with an email. And obviously, you should not, store millions of dollars accessible from your email. But when you start, you just kind of getting some initial value. And by the way, as social matures, there will be, some of this done through social, and kind of initial value will be coming through that. So you sign up with an email, you get an account, but because it's new accounts and you have this ability to change keys, to kind of applications can actually guide you through the path where you increase in the security of your of your account as there's more value being accrued, right? Like again, if you're just starting and there's $1 sitting there, you don't really care that it's an email, right? You probably have more valuable things there. But as maybe you got an NFT for $1 and then it went up in price to 10,000. Now you probably should set up a more secure setup, maybe with recovery methods, maybe with using hardware, maybe using custody, etc. And you can just rotate the key, change the key, or add set up multisig, 2FA. All of these options are all there. So you have this like progressive kind of security, which is defined by the apps, by the wallets, by the interactions you're having. And then on the other side, you have things like Aurora Plus, right, which allow you to kind of interact with this without having tokens on your, without having to pay fees. And so you can start with, social or with other things that are value generating, value creation, and get, first things into this interaction, get kind of connected into a DAO, potentially, get a grant or, get a salary, or whatever, like if you're interacting with like near crowd. And so kind of all of this, some kind of payment, like all of this is, leads to your gaining some financial interaction in the system and then interacting through that. So kind of from a user perspective, right, focusing on what is the user level value add, value creation places, onboarding users there, and then retaining them through the economy, retaining them through creator economy as well, right? Because they can, start producing their own value, right? Through content, through interaction, through gaming, play to earn. And so all of that, kind of feeds into this value creation loop through kind of value that users are capturing. So there's a lot, obviously, here still to be built, and kind of a lot more to figure out how to retain users. But it's important to think about users, not just investors, because I think crypto has been usually thinking of users as investors who need to buy in token, need to start interacting with this token. And so it's a very different interaction versus if you're a user and you actually creating and interacting with the value, and there is something that you're getting for creating this value in the system. But underlying all this, making it really easy, kind of hiding a lot of the blockchain, right? Hiding the transaction fees, hiding the kind of user onboarding with an email, with SMS, with whatever methods, like Google account sign up as well. You can do that to really make this barrier to entry really low. And so we have platform, we have ecosystem, we have apps being built. Obviously, ecosystem is continue evolving, and now within our mission is power of governance. So how do we coordinate this? Obviously on each level, the apps themselves need coordination, need governance, but we need the governance for the whole ecosystem. We need to make decisions, we need to deploy capital, and we need pretty much a near level governance. Now, that is extremely complicated problem. And I've been working on it for a while. There's a lot of people who've been working on it for a while, both inside the ecosystem and outside. You've probably seen maybe even some of my talks about this. But at the end, we need to start making progress and kind of start evolving. So obviously, the big part is, there needs to be meta governance embedded, meaning it should be able to evolve itself, because it will be one way or another an experiment. The reason why we actually started AstroDAO project and Sputnik DAO project was to start experimenting, to start testing this out. And then we have 600 DAOs now. Some of them are pretty big that been using this tooling and kind of learning from that experience. And biggest learning, which obviously in hindsight, but just pure token voting, pure token participation doesn't work. Smaller groups, the smaller the better, actually make really good progress. And as it grows, people kind of becoming less invested in making decisions and participating. And so it's pretty clear there needs to be some form of delegation. Some delegates who are active participants, who are compensated, who are actually also taking responsibility for the decisions they're making, and potentially are actively working on proposals, review of proposals from the community, and represent different stakeholders in the community. And so we've had this long-term idea, right, of different houses, pretty much, house of stake, house of geo, house of, developers. So kind of getting representatives from different types of stakeholders. Now, again, in the spirit of simplicity as well as, being pragmatic, start with some of this and then evolve. This would be important. Now, what are the functions of this? The functions are obviously, fund allocation. This is, foundation has been doing some of this, but as we, move in this very much decentralized ecosystem where there's more and more parties doing various investments, various capital allocations, this new governance, right, is becoming kind of a fund-of-fund strategy, deciding where and which aspects to allocate, right? I mentioned in ecosystem there's different verticals, different geographies, so this is where proposals will be reviewed, proposals for different verticals, for new things get reviewed by community as well as by delegates, and then decided to allocate, and because it's a fund of fund, it actually will be if working well, should be actually replenishing the treasury as well over time, as the bets are actually playing out. Now, we don't expect that this governance will be making technical protocol decisions. Like, that's just not probable that these delegates are all super technical and able to make them. But at the same time, we don't want to have a stalemate situation where there's a proposal that kind of continuously stuck because nobody is able to make a decision in this. And so the biggest role of this is arbitrage. It's arbitrage of because there's different stakeholders, there's different companies participating and contributing to the protocol, it's possible that there's also different interests that are misaligned. And so this needs to do arbitrage and decide between, if somebody proposes to reduce staking rewards, right? The validators will be against it, developers will be pro it. Like, there needs to be some form of decision that needs to be made. And so this is governance, is how to make these arbitrage decisions. And this overall strategy, right, and communication. Now, you don't expect a DAO, a decentralized organization, to do this, but it again need to review, formalize, and confirm this, because again, right now, a lot of this, I'm doing some of this work. There's a lot of people in the community doing it. There's a lot of folks now across different ecosystems, different eco-funds and geos are doing this. But at the end, it needs to be collected into one place, ratified, and people need to know this is where they go to see it, right? And so this can be, every year publishing research of the ecosystem, what have happened, and what are the, upcoming things that should be invested more, people should be working more. And obviously it should collect feedback from the whole ecosystem, go through a review process, and represent it as it communicates. And communication is important, right? And as we move in this more decentralized ecosystem, right, the expectation, should not be that foundation will be the voice of the ecosystem. It is kind of becoming more and more decentralized, there's more parties talking, and so it's important to have kind of a number of different, outlets, things like Nearweek, Nearians, etc., which are kind of serve almost like as a media of the ecosystem, right? And actually working across both, near governance, eco funds, regional hubs, applications, protocol contributors to collect the information and spread it to the community and ecosystem. And so kind of as we see this, right, a lot of the function that, Foundation started to do when it was launching, right, are moving to the governance, to the ecosystem, to the funds, to really support this kind of continuous decentralization of the ecosystem, right? And so in a couple of years, the expectation is will be taking over most of the kind of active functions that we've been seeing foundations do, and Foundation really moving more into the support role and kind of, more being maybe representative in the regulatory side, versus this is, becoming the decision maker, the fund allocator, and the arbitrator of the ecosystem. Now, a lot of work to do. I need your participation, and so I welcome kind of your feedback across forums as well as this is going to be launching directly on this platform. And so with this, to close it up, Near has been building a decentralized ecosystem. There's a platform that powers this. There's ecosystem that supports this. There are apps that are attracting the users. 1 billion users is a goal. We're 1% there, but extremely growing fast and accelerating. We have the governance kind of in progress and being rolled out, and we need more of everything. We need more contributors on the platform side, more infrastructure projects. We need more eco funds, more regional hubs, more folks to support the ecosystem across marketing, across BD, across various other roles. And we need more applications. We need more people building different pieces of this, both on kind of the standards as well as the end user side. We need your participation in governance. It's extremely important. Again, our mission is to give power of governance, and so we need to make it simple. We need to make it straightforward for people to participate, and we needed to make it to matter as well for people. And grow the usage, bring your friends, build applications that bring more users. I've heard this, like if every single person brings 10 their friends' apps, to participate, we're gonna have exponential growth in the year. One person a month, and we're gonna be growing exponentially as this expands. So follow Near Protocol on Twitter, near.org for more details, gov.near.org for the governance forum. And I'll see you out there. Thank you.